I took a deep breath as I stepped into our family home, a place steeped in history, filled with echoes of laughter and arguments alike. The scent of freshly baked lasagna wafted through the air, mingling with the autumn chill creeping through the cracks of the old wooden structure. Our family dinners had always been a ritual, a time to catch up and celebrate, but tonight felt different. My palms were clammy as my heart raced, the tension palpable as I made my way to the dining room. Elate, my mother said, her tone sharp as she set the table. Her eyes flicked to the wall clock, a hint of irritation mixed with expectation. I could see the perfectly polished silverware reflecting the warm glow of the chandelier, a stark contrast to the heaviness settling in my chest. I know, I replied, forcing a smile even as I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. Traffic was awful. That was only partly true. I had taken the long way home, needing a moment to gather my thoughts, to brace myself for what was coming. Tonight we would be discussing the inheritance after my grandfather's passing. The mere thought sent chills down my spine. "At least you made it," my sister piped up from the corner of the room. She was perched on her chair, scrolling through her phone, the flicker of the screen illuminating her face like a spotlight. She barely looked up, a slight smirk playing on her lips. "If you had listened to Mom in the first place, you would not have missed anything." She loved to throw that in my face. When had she become my mother's little pet, obeying every command while I felt more like a burden? As I settled into my seat, I felt the weight of my father's gaze. He sat at the head of the table, fingers steepled, his expression unreadable. What was he thinking? The burden of decisions and family loyalty loomed over him like a dark cloud, and I held my breath, wondering if he would choose to favor my sister over me tonight. "Let's be clear," my father said, breaking the silence as he leaned forward, elbows resting on the table. The tension was thick enough to cut. "Tonight we discuss grandfather's will and what it means for each of us." His voice was steady, yet there was an edge. He was preparing for a battle. At the mention of the will, my hands started to shake. My grandfather had always favored me, often saying I reminded him of his younger self. But in the wake of his death, that favor could easily slip from my grasp, especially with my sister's calculated charm. I could almost hear her plotting in the background like a fox in the henhouse. My mother cleared her throat, drawing our attention. "Your grandfather left behind a significant sum, over $150,000. She paused for dramatic effect, her eyes darting between us, searching for a reaction. "He expressed wishes that each of you use it wisely." The figure hit me like a slap, $150,000. My mind raced with the possibilities, a mix of exhilaration and dread. I had dreams, plans for a small business, something that could give me independence from this suffocating atmosphere. But I felt the looming shadow of my sister's ambitions, her glittering dreams no doubt beckoning like sirens. "But we all know the reality," my sister interjected, her voice laced with mock sweetness. "Mother and father have always favored you. Just look at how they reacted when you graduated from college and I didn't. You know they will want to give you more, don't you?" Her eyes glinted with mischief, my words froze in my mouth. She was right about my graduation. My parents had poured all their hopes into me. It was as though I had become their trophy of success, while she remained the forgotten child, a shadow behind my achievements. I felt guilty, yet the competitive fire inside me began to kindle. My heart raced as I glanced at my mother, who wore her usual expression of disappointment. "I am so tired of this," I finally whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Tired of playing your games." The boldness surprised me, a flicker of defiance igniting. "Is this really how we will honor grandfather? By tearing each other apart over money?" "Don't act as if you are the martyr here," my sister shot back, her voice sharp. "You just want to keep that money to yourself, don't you? Always the golden one in this family." I couldn't help but feel the hot sting of tears threatening to spill. Despite my frustrations, I felt trapped in her narrative, always the favored daughter and the one pushing everyone away. I opened my mouth, ready to say something, anything to defend myself, but the words got stuck. My father's gaze was piercing, and I could feel his disappointment hanging thick in the air. "Both of you," my father said, his voice booming. "Stop this bickering now. Your grandfather would not have wanted this." He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "Tonight should be about remembrance, not conflict." I nodded, desperately trying to hold back my emotions, but my mother cut in smoothly, her demeanor placating. "Your grandfather trusted me to be the executor. It is my duty to ensure this is done fairly." Her voice was calm, but I could see the quiver at the edges of her lips, a signal of her own insecurities. "We will follow his wishes closely." "Sure, just as you've always followed the path laid out by your beloved grandfather," my sister scoffed. I felt a surge of anger bubbling inside me. My father's gaze snapped toward my sister, his jaw tightening. "Enough, both of you. You need to understand what this money represents. It is not just about what is fair, it's about keeping the integrity of our family intact." With that, an uneasy silence filled the room. The tension was thicker than the lasagna that now lay before us, the scent almost suffocating. I focused on my plate, pushing food around as I fought to suppress the storm brewing within me. I could feel my sister's eyes on me, her smirk stubbornly plastered across her face. She loved this, seeing me squirm under the pressure of our family's expectations. Infuriated me, yet deep down I felt a creeping sadness. "This isn't just about the money," I whispered, finally looking up. "This is about family." "Family?" my sister laughed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Tell me, which family are you talking about? The one that favors you at every opportunity, or the one that I've been cut out of since I was born?" I froze, my breath hitching as shock coursed through my veins. Every single word was a dagger aimed at my chest. "You think it is that simple?" I asked, my voice quiet but firm. You think I wanted this? That being the favorite didn't come with its own burdens? My mother sighed, her shoulders slumping. We are all dealing with grief in our own ways, she said softly in an attempt to unify us. But the weight of the unspoken grievance hung heavier than ever. I don't care about the money, I exclaimed, the words spilling from my lips before I could stop them. I care about being recognized for who I am, not just for what you expect me to be. My voice trembled with emotion, the walls of my restraint crumbling around me. I looked at my father, desperate for understanding. I feel like I am always walking a tightrope, and the moment I think I have balance, someone shakes it beneath me. Oh, please, my sister scoffed, crossing her arms defiantly. You're overreacting. Nobody is shaking anything. You are just afraid of losing your precious position. And just like that, the division between us solidified like an unbreakable wall. My brother had yet to join the conversation, and I could guess why. He was typically neutral, the peacemaker, but tonight even he was quiet. I turned to him as he leaned back, eyes on the ceiling, not ready to step into this battlefield of words between the women in his life. Why don't you say something? I pleaded, glancing at my brother. Here he was, sitting in the middle, avoiding the chaos that had begun to engulf the table. Because it never ends well when I do, he replied, shrugging dismissively. You two have this twisted tradition of arguing over nothing that means everything. The weight of his words hit me like a punch in the gut. This was not nothing, this was everything. The stakes were higher than any of us wanted to admit. The dining room, once filled with laughter and love, now felt like a battlefield lined with invisible scars. I felt tears welling up, but I blinked them away, swallowing hard. I would not give my sister the satisfaction of seeing me break. Suddenly, a loud bang interrupted our stale glare off. My mother stood up too fast, and a glass slipped from her grasp, shattering against the hardwood floor like the remnants of our family ties. Enough, she shouted, her voice sharp as glass. It took a moment for the noise to settle, silence crashing down like a wave, leaving us all stunned. My heart thudded in my chest, and I felt the very air of the room change, thick with unsaid words and unresolved anger. Look what we've become, my mother said softly, her voice trembling. The tears in her eyes mirrored my own. We have allowed the money to poison the love we had. This is not what grandfather would have wanted. And do you think it's easy for me? My sister's voice broke slightly, revealing a crack in her armor. I have always been the one who felt less than. This legacy, this family, they have always chosen you over me. The admission hung in the air, heavy with regret and longing. I wanted to reach out to assure her that she was more than the shadow she thought she was. We had lost someone important together, but this moment was where our family crumbled and I was done being a pawn. I thought we were supposed to support each other, I said defiantly, standing my ground. Not tear each other apart because of a dollar sign. No amount of money can replace love. The silence was excruciating, the family ties stretched to their limit, feeling as if they might snap under the weight of our emotions. I glanced between my father and mother, hoping for some sign, some way to bridge this widening chasm. My heart was pounding, the tension suffocating. Just then, my sister leaned forward, her expression hardening. Maybe you all need to wake up. I will not sit here and let you dictate how this will go down. If this is about memory and honor, then we'll see how far you all go without me, not just in money but in family too. With that, she pushed back her chair and stood up, the noise of the wood scraping against the floor echoing like a gunshot in the charged atmosphere. My heart raced, and I knew I couldn't let this moment pass. Where are you going? I called out, my voice cracking with urgency. Somewhere you cannot control, she shot back, her eyes blazing with defiance. And with that, she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her, the sound reverberating through the house like an alarm bell marking the end of innocence. I felt a pang of fear and betrayal engulf me like an icy wave. What was she planning? What lines had she crossed in her mind? The stunned silence that followed was deafening, our family fractured, teetering on the brink. I could feel my heart pounding against my chest, driven by a mix of desperation and resolve. This was just the beginning, and I knew then that things would never be the same. Decisions had to be made, battles fought, and if I wanted that money to pursue my dreams and claim my place in this family, I would have to rise to the occasion. The darkness of the room seemed to envelop me, the broken glass on the floor glittering like lost opportunities. I stood up slowly, my back straightening, determined in my resolve. Things were going to change. This was just the start of something that would unravel with every secret and betrayal laid bare. I turned to my parents, my voice firmer than ever. We can't allow this to destroy us. I won't let it. And as I stepped away from the wreckage, I knew deep down this was more than just an inheritance. It was about reclaiming my voice, it was about family, and it was about revenge for the wrongs that had been done. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to fight for my truth. I woke up the next morning feeling the weight of yesterday's confrontation resting heavy on my chest. The sun poured through the slats of the blinds, casting stripes across my room like bars. I took a deep breath and tried to shake off the awful knot in my stomach, but it was still there, twisting every time I thought of my family and the issue that loomed over us like a dark cloud. My mother had been so cool, so detached. It felt like she had forgotten that I was even part of this family. The thoughts made me tense, and I rubbed my temples, trying to ease the tension that had settled there overnight. Ella, breakfast is ready. My mother called from the kitchen, her voice lilting and cheerful, completely at odds with what had happened the night before. I cringed. How could she act like everything was fine, as if we had not been tearing at each other, exposing wounds that had been festering for too long? It took me a moment to gather myself, but eventually I swung my legs out of bed and shuffled to the kitchen. The smell of sizzling bacon and freshly brewed coffee assaulted my senses as I stepped inside, and I was immediately reminded of my childhood, the warm, comforting aroma filling the air at the start of each day. My father sat at the table, pouring sugar into his cup of coffee, glancing up at me with an expression that felt like it had been rehearsed. "Morning, Ella," he said a little too brightly. I wondered if he thought morning greetings would smooth over everything, as if he were trying to ignore the elephant in the room. I nodded silently and took a seat, my heart racing. I could hear the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock as if it were counting down to some impending doom. My mother reached for a plate of bacon, her hands moving mechanically like she was in a routine. "I made your favorite, sweetie. Thought you might appreciate it," she said, placing a piece of bacon in front of me. A gesture meant to warm my heart, but I just stared at it, my appetite gone. "Just great, thanks," I mumbled, forcing a tight smile. My brother strolled in, still half asleep, hair tousled and shirt wrinkled. He dropped into the chair across from me, rubbing his eyes. "What's with the serious faces?" he asked, a hint of sleep still in his voice. I cut my eyes at my mother, but she only smiled, her gaze unwavering as if nothing could faze her. "Just trying to have a pleasant breakfast," my mother said, her voice still too cheerful, but I could sense the undercurrent of tension. I could feel it in my gut, like a storm building where there should be peace. My brother looked between the two of us, confusion etching lines onto his forehead. I had been bracing for an explosion since I woke up, and the misshapen fragments of last night still echoed in my mind. "Did I miss something?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Did I miss the family meeting about the inheritance?" At his words, my stomach churned and a heavy silence fell over the table. The word inheritance hung in the air, heavier than an anvil, darkening what was supposed to be a joyful family breakfast. "Maybe we should have a little chat about that," my mother said coolly, cutting through the tension. I clenched my fists under the table, my nails digging into my palms, and nodded. I definitely had something to say. My voice was barely contained, ramping up with every heartbeat. "Because that's what this is all about, right?" I said, my tone sharper than I intended. My brother's eyes widened slightly, but he remained silent, sensing the danger. "Is it fair for you two to decide who gets what when you're the ones who made the mistake of choosing favorites?" The air shifted. My mother's expression turned panic-stricken for a split second before her usual composure returned. "This is not about favoritism, Ella." "Oh, really?" I shot back, my heart racing as anger flared in my chest. My hands shook slightly as I imagined what they had done. "You chose them over me." I didn't shout, but the conviction behind my words resonated painfully in the silence. I could see my mother's jaw tighten, her fingers curling around her coffee cup like a vice. "Stop it right now," my brother yelled suddenly, voice cracking in the middle. "We all know it's messy and we can't change anything. Can we just have one breakfast without bringing up the past? You don't get to decide what I can and cannot say," I snapped back, feeling the burn of righteous indignation course through me. "This is my family too, but it feels like I'm being cut off, like you have decided to erase me." "Ella, you are not erased. You made your choices too," my mother argued, but her voice trembled just slightly, revealing an edge of fear. "What choice did I have?" I demanded, desperation lacing my tone. "You both were so fixated on your image, wanting the neighbors to see the perfect family, that you forgot about me entirely." Sitting across from me, my brother looked utterly torn, caught in the crossfire of our escalating fight. "Ella, just breathe for a second. Maybe if you could just listen." "Listen to what? More unfairness? More manipulation?" I felt my heart quicken with each passing second. "How could I ever trust you again?" My mother's composure cracked further, and I watched as her hands trembled slightly on the table. "This conversation is going nowhere," she shouted, the warm, inviting tone replaced with frustration and angst. "You're right, it's going nowhere because you refuse to see the truth," I exclaimed, my voice rising as I leaned forward, the wooden chair creaking beneath me. "You think throwing money at me will make everything okay? Newsflash, I do not want your handouts, especially not when you handed the best parts of our family to someone else." "I am doing my best," my mother cried, her voice breaking, making my chest ache with an unfamiliar pang of guilt. "If you could see how much I have sacrificed." "Sacrificed?" I echoed, letting out a half scoff, half laugh. "You sacrificed my happiness for the sake of an image, and now you act like I should be grateful for crumbs." At that moment, I felt my brother's hands trembling on the table as if he wanted to interject but was frozen, weighing the danger of getting involved. "Guys, please, stop it." My mother interrupted him fiercely. "Your emotions are clouding your judgment. We're a family, we have to make tough decisions sometimes." "Family?" I felt bile rise in my throat as I spat the word. "That's rich coming from you." My heart was racing. I had never spoken to my mother with such force. I was terrified of what came next, but the anger gave me a sense of empowerment. I kept going, feeling almost reckless. "You don't get to decide who our family is or what that means. You just threw me to the wolves, and I want nothing to do with this." In that moment, I felt lightheaded, as if I might faint from the collision of emotions swirling inside me. Glaring at the tabletop, the patterns of the wood blurred. It suddenly all felt like a bad dream, consciousness choking in the form of raw family tension. My mother inhaled sharply, and a flicker of something resembling recognition passed through her eyes. "Ella, please." Her voice softened, but so did my fury. I could hear how raw it was, and a part of me wanted to withdraw, to hide my heart away again, but anger curdled inside. "Please do, Ella me," I said, inhaling deeply, trying to identify the intimidating rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins. "I'm tired of being the good daughter who turns the other cheek. I have a voice, and I will use it to claim what is mine." My brother froze suddenly, eyes wide as if he were bracing for impact. I was adopted by this conviction to trust in my own strength, fueled by the years of feeling invisible. It burst forth into an uncontrollable fire of desperation to claim my place in this family once and for all. I could feel the table trembling with our collective energy, and yet there was a stillness, thick and suffocating, that kept everything at a standstill. My mother stared at me, her expression shifting as she absorbed my protest. And then she broke. "You think I did not love you? That I turned my back on you? I stood up for you time and again. What do you know about love?" I shot back, feeling the heat of her words bite and sting in my chest. "You think that just because you did what you thought was right for your image, it makes you some sort of saint?" Silence fell between us, but not the comfortable kind. This silence was jagged, like glass shards, pinching painfully into our hands if we dared to touch it. I could feel my brother shift uncomfortably, wishing he was anywhere else. The smell of bacon now seemed heavy and suffocating, every breath tasting stale and heavy. "Ella, please," my brother prompted, looking desperately back and forth between us, hoping to ease the storm. "That is enough." Suddenly, the tension snapped and a loud crash echoed through the kitchen. We all startled as the glass coffee pot shattered into a million sharp pieces, the sound slicing through the thick suffocation we had built. My mother turned as if the sound were a physical blow, and her face went pale as she stared at the shards glistening on the tiles, wild panic darting behind her eyes. "I can't do this anymore," she shouted suddenly, her voice almost a wail, and it was then I almost regretted pushing so hard, though I felt justified. Tears welled up in her eyes, and the sight of her distress kicked me in the gut. "Don't walk away," I shouted, but my words caved under the gravity of the moment. I had never seen my mother so undone, and though I wanted to stand firm in my anger, a small piece of me felt a pang of regret. "Done?" she cried, her voice cracking. "You don't understand how hard this is for me. Everything feels like it's falling apart." With those words, she ran out of the kitchen, leaving only shock in her wake, the kind of stunning silence that knocked the wind out of me. My brother stared after her, the tumult of emotions swirling like a storm inside him. "What are we doing?" he whispered as he stared at the empty space. The question hovered in the air like thick fog, adding another layer of complexity to the already strained dynamics. "I just want to fix this," I murmured desperately, seeing the chaotic mess we had created. "We can't keep fighting like this," he replied, his voice firm but also desperate, trying to hold on to both me and our family. But I had no answers, no means to console. All I felt was the weight of our fractured family pressing down heavy on my shoulders. The atmosphere had shifted, dread hung in the air, a foreboding sign that our family was at a breaking point. And with that, I realized we were on the edge of a cliff, teetering dangerously. But I felt resolute, determined that this fight was worth it. I was not backing down, and so, as the tension began to seep slowly out of the room, I held tightly to the resolve forming in the pit of my stomach. The next time we faced each other, I promised myself things would be different. I would claim my place, standing against the storm, no matter the cost involved. I glanced at the broken shards glimmering across the floor, a symbolic representation of our family shattered but ready to be rebuilt. In that decisive moment, as the sounds of the world faded into the background, I understood that my quest for justice was just beginning. And if it would take revenge to right the wrongs of our family, so be it. When she returned, I would be waiting with the fire of resolve ignited within me, ready to claim what was rightfully mine. I could feel the tension in the air as I walked into the living room, the faint smell of candles still lingering from last night's dinner. The room was dimly lit, shadows creeping along the walls, and I could see my parents sitting stiffly on the couch. My heart raced in my chest, pounding against my ribcage like it wanted to break free. I knew this conversation would be different, serious, charged with unspoken words and unshed tears. I took a deep breath as I tried to steady myself, knowing I was stepping right into the storm. "Ella," my mother said, her voice steady, but I could catch the slightest tremor beneath the surface. "We need to talk." I swallowed hard, my throat feeling dry as sandpaper, and nodded slowly, taking a seat across from them. My father had his arms crossed over his chest, looking as if he had built a fortress around himself. I always knew that when he did that, he was bracing for something he didn't want to face. "About what?" My voice came out softer than I intended. I remembered their expressions from last night, the bruised look in their eyes after everything that had happened during dinner. The way my mother had flinched when my brother casually mentioned the impending inheritance reading sent another wave of anxiety skittering down my spine. Secrets had a way of surfacing like a stormy sea, and I was terrified of what was about to hit me. "Your grandfather's will," my father said bluntly, his voice flat and controlled. My stomach flipped. How could that simple phrase carry so much weight, so much strain? "You know, his decision on who gets what." "Well, who gets what?" I asked, suddenly feeling small. My parents exchanged a glance that said so much more than words could convey, and my heart dropped, the flutter of panic taking flight. "I mean, it's not like you're going to cut me out completely, right?" My mother's lips pressed into a thin line, and her eyes widened momentarily as if she was debating how much to reveal. "It's complicated, Ella. Your grandfather had some strong feelings about who should inherit his estate. But it's our family estate." I felt the heat rising in my cheeks, a mix of frustration and disbelief swirling inside me. "It belongs to all of us." My father uncrossed his arms and leaned forward. "He chose to favor your brother," he said, his words bringing a chill to the air. "He felt a connection with him that he didn't have with you." The floor dropped out from beneath me, and I felt my palms start to sweat as anger boiled in my veins. "So you're just going to let this happen? You're going to stand by and let him take everything?" Ella, it's not that simple, my mother interjected, her voice strained. You don't understand the history behind this. Then help me understand. You're acting like I'm just supposed to sit back and accept that I am being cut off. I could feel my heart racing, the adrenaline surging through me, propelling me forward. I wasn't going to back down, I couldn't. My father's face hardened. He wants to give your brother the house, the cars. The total is almost $500,000 in value. Do you understand? That is not something you can just dismiss. I went pale, the number echoing in my mind like a death knell. $500,000. My brother didn't even like the house that much, let alone the cherry red sports car that had been parked in the driveway all summer, collecting more dust than appreciation. I fought against the wave of desperation surging within me. But about me, what do I get? It's not about what he gets or what you get, it is about what your grandfather feels is right, my mother countered, her eyes darting away. His decision stands. His decision, he was going to give me the house. I thought I was going to inherit it when the time came. Every word felt like a dagger as I plunged deeper into the reality of this betrayal. You can't just let him choose favorites. This is unfair. My father shook his head, his expression unyielding. Your grandfather did what he felt was best for the family. He was well aware of your ambitions and he chose to support your brother instead. The argument swirled in my mind, taunting me. Support, as in chipping away at the very foundation of our family? I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms, grounding myself in the rising tide of betrayal. So what? You blindly agree with everything he says, you won't stand up for what is right. Ella, you need to calm down, my mother warned, her voice rising sharply in the silence. Screaming won't change anything and it won't help any of us. I felt a strangled cry threatening to burst from my chest, the frustration boiling over. How can I calm down when my own family is falling apart? I looked from one parent to the other, searching for a shred of solidarity, but all I found was resignation and guilt. My brother doesn't deserve anything, not after how he treats the rest of us. How can you stand behind this? It's not about what he deserves, my father snapped, the tension in the room thickening like a heavy fog. It is about what is legally binding, Ella. Your grandfather made his choice. He made it clear to everyone, including you. You need to realize that this is not just an emotional issue, this is a financial one. So, because it's financial, I should just roll over. The disbelief surged within me, palpable and consuming. I'm sorry, but it feels like you both have just shut me out completely. I'm not a child anymore. I have a right to speak up. I never said you were a child, but you need to understand the bigger picture. My father's voice cracked slightly, betraying the frustration in his tone. The unwavering strength of his voice wavered, revealing layers of concern that were buried even deeper beneath the surface. Bigger picture? I scoffed. What if I don't want to be part of your picture? You both have failed to see me all these years, and now you expect me to stand by and accept this. I didn't expect anything, Ella, my mother said softly, her voice trembling. I just don't want this to tear our family apart. Surely you can understand that. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision as I fought to hold them back. Tear us apart? Living with favoritism is already tearing us apart. How can you tolerate this? My voice cracked, betrayal heavy in the air. My father stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. Ella, you can't go around demanding what you think is right. You're being selfish. The word hit me like a slap to the face, and I froze for a moment, hurt radiating from my heart like chill through a winter morning. Selfish? I whispered, incredulity spilling over every syllable. No, this is about justice. It is about fighting for what is rightfully mine. You are both choosing to ignore the issues that are going to destroy our family for greed. Now listen here, my mother interjected, voice firm. The last thing we want is for greed to interrupt this family. You've always been favored in other ways, haven't you? Favored by who, how? I gasped, collapsing back in my chair, shocked at how quickly the narrative had shifted. You have no idea how hard I worked for everything I have while my brother has coasted along his whole life. I know that, my father sighed, rubbing his neck as if to ease the tension. But you also need to realize that your grandfather had reasons. This decision isn't entirely arbitrary. Reasons I would love to understand, but you both are too consumed by whatever familial loyalty you hold to see the truth. My voice was rising again, drowning under the weariness of this battle. Why can't you see that you are overlooking my role in this family? Why choose gaping silence over honesty? I just don't want us to spin out of control, my mother implored. We don't need to fight amongst ourselves. That's not an option anymore. It needs to be addressed, and I am done staying silent, I screamed, feeling the room vibrate with urgency. If my grandfather thinks he can erase me, he has another thing coming. I am not backing down. There was a pause, a breath held captive in the silence, the very air electric with each unresolved tension. Every heartbeat pulsed in my ears as I stared into the faces of my parents, searching for understanding, searching for something that felt solid in this chaotic world. I can't believe you two, I murmured, my voice cracking with despair. You're standing by and letting this injustice happen. That is enough, my father suddenly bellowed, startling me. He clenched his jaw, eyebrows knitting together as he glared at me. If you want to fight this on your own, then fine. But do not come back to us when it all falls apart. Know that you are alone in this, my breath caught in my throat. Alone, I repeated, the bitterness consuming me. It sounds to me like you already chose sides. You're refusing to stand with me, refusing to see the truth. Maybe I'm refusing to see you being reckless. He shot back, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes that I clung to, searching for a glimmer of hope. In an instant, I was overwhelmed by the urgency crashing around me. I stood, fists trembling at my sides, ready to turn this anger into something productive, something powerful. I am going to fight for what is mine, I declared, my voice steady as I glared back at my father, who looked almost bewildered. I hope you'll be ready to face the consequences of this." Without another word, I turned on my heel and strode out of the living room, emotions still churning within me like a storm on the horizon. My heart raced as I burst through the front door, the crisp evening air hitting my face, the cool breeze a stark contrast to the heated arguments echoing in my mind. I realized at that moment just how far I was willing to go for my share of this family story. As I stepped into the dim light outside, my thoughts spiraled into determination, a spark igniting within me. I would not just stand by, I would find a way to ensure my voice was heard. The world was waiting, and I would unravel these unjust threads that bound me. My grandfather had made a choice, but I would make mine, a choice to reclaim what was rightfully ours. And just as I was about to walk away, I heard the door behind me slam shut, echoing in my ears like a statement of finality. The air felt heavy, pregnant with unresolved tension, and as I turned to look back at my parents, shockwaves of realization coursed through me. Their silence rang louder than any words they could have shouted. I could see just how truly divided our family had become. I took one last look back, filled with a mix of resolve and heartache. The air crackled with the resolve of untold battles ahead, a sense that this was only just the beginning, and I was ready for whatever storm lay ahead. I stood rigid as I watched my father at the head of the table, his fingers drumming impatiently against the polished oak surface. The scent of roasted chicken hung in the air like an unwanted reminder of happier family dinners, and the warm glow of the candles seemed to mock the pallor that had washed over my face. My heart raced, loud enough that I could almost hear it echoing against the walls of our dining room, where so many arguments had been shouted and so many secrets had been kept. My mother was seated next to him, her eyes darting between him and me, a mix of defiance and concern etched on her face, while my brother sat slumped in his chair, staring at his plate like it held the answers to the universe. And then there was my sister, who was cradling her glass of wine so tightly that her knuckles went white. I could see the tension in her shoulders, a simmering volcano ready to erupt, and I recognized the feeling all too well. It had been this way for weeks, but tonight felt different. Tonight felt charged like the air before a storm. "So," my father began, his tone crisp and calculating, "let's get to it. We need to talk about your grandmother's estate." The mention of my grandmother sent a chill through me. She had always favored my brother and sister, gifting them with whatever they wanted while I was left with nothing but her knitted sweaters and a doll that I had outgrown. I had become accustomed to being the outcast of the family, but this inheritance discussion felt like a knife twisting in my gut. My sister slammed her glass down, the sound reverberating through the tense silence. "You mean mom's share, right? We all know you are going to shove us aside and just give everything to your precious favorites," she shot back, her voice rising like a crescendo of indignation. My sister had a way of cutting through the tension with her words, revealing the raw wounds that we all tried. "You know that is not true," my mother interjected, her voice shaking ever so slightly. "Your grandmother made her wishes very clear, and we need to honor them." Her eyes flicked towards me, a silent warning against speaking out. I could feel the weight of everything unsaid pressed down on my chest, but I was done feeling silenced. "Honor her wishes," I echoed, my voice trembling but defiant. "More like dishonor me. I was there for her day after day while you all acted as though I didn't exist. She knew I needed her. You act like she didn't love me, too." Anger surged through me, fiery and primal, igniting the words I had kept buried for too long. "It's so unfair. You all always cut me out. Was I just supposed to sit quietly while you all decided my fate?" My father's face went pale as I dared to unleash my fury. His lips thinned into an imperceptible line, a warning for me to back down. "Now is not the time for this," he said in a low voice that made my stomach twist. "Your sister has a point. Your grandmother wanted to keep things simple." The mocking tone was right there in his words, shards of bitterness laced through the coolness of his demeanor. I almost wanted to laugh at the hypocrisy of him trying to keep things simple when our entire family dynamic was anything but simple. I shot back. "Is that why we're gathered here, so we can discuss who gets what while I am left with nothing? I have always been the one who cared the most." I felt my hands shaking as I spoke, my resolve wavering. "And where was my gift? A card? A letter? Anything? I know you all chose favorites, but deep down inside, I thought I mattered." "Who cares?" my brother chimed in, shrugging as if my words were mere ripples on a pond. "It's not like you ever helped anyway. Maybe if you had invested more time, you wouldn't be in this position." His dismissive tone felt like a slap across my face. I wanted to scream at him that being present doesn't always mean buying material nests with shiny ribbons. I had done my part, stood by our grandmother while you all threw gold coins into her lap. "I was here," I cried out, my breath hitching in my throat. "I visited her when no one else would, while you were off playing pretend in your perfect lives." The truth spilled from my lips in a torrent. The tears welled up so suddenly that I had to blink them away. "You think I'm asking for money? I didn't need money, I needed love. Is that so hard to understand?" "Stop whining," my sister shot back, her face flushed with anger. "Just because you feel like you deserve something doesn't mean that you did. What makes you so special? Maybe your favor was cashed out before you discovered your worth." "I don't care about favors," I yelled, my chest rising and falling with the fury of a volcano ready to erupt. My palms were sweaty, but I was done feeling weak, done silencing my thoughts. This time I would not back down. "Take a breath," my mother said softly, as if she were trying to soothe a wounded animal. "This is not how family should behave." But it was how we behaved, wasn't it? We were masters of the art of conflict, painters of bitterness who couldn't see the beauty through the rage. "We are not going to let this ruin our lives," my father said, his voice gaining strength. Your grandmother wanted unity, not this chaos. The illusion you tried to create choked me. She made it clear who her favorites were, and it is completely unfair for you to act like you did something for her. Favorites? I nearly spat the word. I could feel the guilt clawing at my insides. Was I really going to let them paint me as the villain again? They had turned my childhood insecurity into a weapon aimed straight at my heart. You say it is unfair to me, yet you failed to see just how unseen I always felt. My soul felt crushed beneath the weight of their judgment, but something fierce ignited within me. I suddenly recalled the last days of my grandmother's life, her fragile fingers clutching mine while she whispered letters into my ear, all the while knowing her other grandchildren were too busy to care. I am tired of being demoted to the position of forgotten child. You all flaunted your shiny toys and flashy vacations while I helped her turn her pennies into something meaningful. I stood at her side while you called her for free dinners. My voice cracked, but I held my ground, ignoring the biting commentary from my brother and sister. Enough, my father roared, his face flushed with anger. If you cannot control your emotions, how do you expect to be treated fairly? This is why. At that moment, the cell phone on the table buzzed with a notification. Every eye turned toward it, and I felt an undeniable jolt of curiosity and dread. My mother picked up the phone, glancing down at the screen with an expression I could hardly decipher, part surprise, part anxiety. "Who is it?" I asked, my heart racing. I felt like we were all trapped in a volatile courtroom, waiting for the verdict that would change everything. It's about the estate," she stammered, anxiety dancing in her voice. "An attorney is trying to reach out." An attorney? My pulse quickened, my brother and sister exchanged glances full of suspicion. I could sense the shift, like the scales of an unseen balance tipping in a way we could never have foreseen. "You should answer it," I urged, trying to hide the urgency in my voice. "We need to know what is happening. What if it's bad news?" My brother protested, leaning back in his chair, arms crossed defiantly. The smell of the roast chicken was still wafting through the air, but all I could feel was the heaviness of the moment, every second stretching into infinity. "Yes, I want to know," my sister said, almost demandingly. The unity we had wished for was nowhere in sight. "Fine, I'll answer," my mother snapped, her voice sharp. I could hear her breath quickening, the moment almost electric. As she turned back toward the rest of us, her face suddenly drained of color. "What is it?" I pressed, my voice trembling. My heart felt like it was about to burst out of my chest, that fluttering feeling of hope mingled with dread. This was it, the moment where everything could unravel, where my life could change or remain stuck in this web of resentment and division. I need to call him first," and she began, but I could already see it on her face. "Mother," I shouted, desperation dripping from my voice. The urge to shatter the silence pulled like gravity, and I took a step closer, my hands clenched into fists. "Just tell us what's happening." I never got to hear her response because just then her hand shot out to silence me as if she had seen a ghost. "No," she whispered, fear laced in her voice like poison. "It can't be." I felt the room tilt, a pendulum swinging wildly as though the world had just shifted beneath our feet. I froze, caught in that moment of stunned silence, waiting for the ground to shake beneath me. Anxiety twisted in my stomach like a knife as I waited for the revelation that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family. And just like that, the weight of betrayal hung thick in the air, and as I looked into the shocked expressions of my brother and sister, I knew that everything was about to change. Whatever secrets lay buried within our grandmother's estate, they were about to come to the surface in a way none of us were prepared for. It was the moment of reckoning, and with it, the promise of revenge began to burn brightly in my heart. I stood just outside the dining room, the weight of everything pressing down hard on my chest. It was a typical family dinner with the same polished wooden table set for six, gleaming under the warm glow of the chandelier. My mother, always a master at making our old house feel like a postcard, made sure the table was adorned with her favorite floral arrangement. But tonight, it felt like a fragile facade hiding everything that was about to explode. I peered through the door frame, watching my father sit at the head of the table, his usually animated face worn with tension, and my sister and brother laughing over something trivial. The normalcy of it all felt like a cruel joke. "Ella, get in here," my mother called, her tone deceptively cheerful. I knew that under that happiness was a storm ready to let loose. I stepped inside, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "Hey everyone," I greeted, taking my seat. My hands were clammy. "Where's the food?" "Just waiting on you," my brother said, gesturing at the dishes that filled the table. My stomach twisted. Food, the constant distraction to the simmering conflict at hand. Did they even know what was about to unfold? The air thickened as I picked up my fork, the metallic taste of anxiety settling on my tongue. "So, has anyone heard from grandfather?" I asked, trying to deflate the tension with casual conversation. "No, not since the last family gathering," my sister said, her voice light but her eyes were sharp, flitting over to me. "Why, you need him to bail you out of something?" That comment landed like a punch to my gut. "I just thought you might want to know how he is," I said, my voice a little shaky. "But maybe you're too busy dealing with your own problems." The laughter in the room faded, a heavy blanket of silence sinking in. My brother looked at me incredulously, mouth agape. "Wow, Ella," he said, leaning back in his chair. "No need to be so bitter." Bitter, I felt the heat rise to my face. I was being pushed to the edge, and tonight's dinner could very well become the proverbial lit match in a room full of gasoline. "I am not bitter," my voice was a little louder than I intended, fracturing under the emotional strain. "I just think it's odd that this family can pretend everything is fine when it's not." "What are you talking about?" My father interjected, his brow furrowing with displeasure. "Nothing is wrong here, just eat." That made me freeze. Did he really think I could just ignore it all? The unfairness of it all swirled in my head, igniting the fire in my belly. No, I think there is something really wrong, I said, my voice trembling yet bold. Perhaps the favorite child is just too busy flaunting their accomplishments to notice. The tension crept back in, suffocating like a thick fog. What is that supposed to mean? My sister demanded, her tone sharp. Everyone knows mom and dad have always favored you, I shot back, my chest tightening. You could do no wrong in their eyes. I admit I'm not perfect, but it's just so unfair how you stand there pretending. Ella, my mother's voice crackled through the darkness like a lightning bolt, sharp and clear. That is enough, you're making a scene. I could barely register her outrage because the truth rang louder in my mind. I had been silenced my whole life with that one phrase, you're making a scene. My hands were shaking now, and as I looked around the table, I saw pity in my brother's eyes, annoyance in my sister's, and indifference from my parents. Don't make it worse, Ella, my father added, his tone colder than I had ever heard. Why don't you take a moment to realize how this looks? You are starting to become a real embarrassment. Embarrassment. The bitter taste grew stronger in my mouth, pooling darkly at the back of my throat. Maybe this family is the embarrassment, I muttered under my breath, so low that only I could hear, but the guilt was a knife cutting deeper into my resolve. We are a family, we do not air out our dirty laundry like this, my mother retorted, but I caught the edge of emotional strain clawing at her words. It was hypocritical and painful to hear. It ignited a spark of rebellion inside me. Then how come it feels like the walls are closing in on us all? I asked, my tone quieter but laced with determination. You are all just so good at pretending. Pretending, my sister laughed, the sound bitter and harsh. Look who's talking, you are the queen of denial, the words stung. You always pretend you are the martyr, Ella, she continued, eyes blazing. But we all know you are just jealous. Jealous. My heart raced and I stood up, my chair scraping hard against the wooden floor, the disruptive sound echoing around the room. You want to talk about jealousy? I shouted, a fire roaring in my chest. I thought maybe the inheritance would finally mean equal treatment for once, but apparently not. The air went still, shockwaves rippling through each family member. My father spoke first, the color draining from his face. You don't know what you're talking about, he said, his voice wavering. It is not about favoritism, he continued. You are being dramatic, this is not about money. Isn't it though? I countered vehemently. It's always about money. You cut me off when you thought I was in trouble. You all just pretend to care, and really it is just about who gets what from grandfather's estate. You don't want to admit it, but I see you all counting on that inheritance. I was breathing heavily now, and the world felt like it was spiraling around me. I had no idea where the words were coming from, but the truth was spilling out like a dam breaking. I think it is quite unfair, I continued, my voice steadier, finding its own strength in the chaos. It is like you choose favorites over me over everything we've been through. You think it will go to you? My mother scoffed, her eyes narrowing. Not after the last argument with grandfather. You humiliated him and you expect him to just forget after everything you have done. What had I done? I could almost hear any semblance of logical thought screaming for resolution. It is about loyalty, my sister added, smugly enjoying the conflict unfolding. You have burned the bridges, Ella, don't act surprised if you end up with nothing. Something inside me snapped, the grief and anger morphing into relentless resolve. Well, I am not letting this go, I declared, my hands and fists at my sides, trembling with emotion. I deserve better than being treated this way. This whole family deserves better. I will not be pushed aside and ignored anymore. Watch me, just watch. My brother shook his head, eyebrows furrowing deeply. You are just making things worse, Ella. This is not the way, what, to stand up for myself. I couldn't keep the edge out of my voice, fury boiling. Maybe it's time someone called out the truth. The room was charged now, a whirlwind of accusations and defenses, but I could feel something shifting. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of my family's eyes upon me, their expressions a mixture of shock and discomfort. Ella, you are making a mistake, my father warned, his voice low and warning. You don't want to take this to grandfather. You and mother didn't think, you think everything is fine? I shot back, remembering the countless moments of silence following grandfather's raised voice after every family meeting. When he reads his will, I will be there to get what is rightfully mine, whether you like it or not. The finality of my words hung in the air, a challenge I was not ready to relent on. Everyone was still, my family's betrayal hanging like a thick fog, and the tension bounced around the room, vibrating like the strings of a taut bow. I was feeling stronger, unsettled by the cascade of emotions swirling within me. You have no idea what you are talking about, do you? My mother snapped, her composure cracking. You are so absorbed in your own pain, you cannot recognize what this family has done for you. I felt my heart racing, the fight or flight reflex kicking in. And what have you done for me? Cut me off, dismiss me. You need to learn the hard truth, Ella, my sister declared forcefully, leaning forward, her eyes fierce. In this family, you can choose dissolution over acceptance, but the consequences are yours to bear alone. I felt cornered but wrestled against the doubt clawing at my mind. If you all believe that, then so be it, I said, my voice steady and firm. But understand this, I will fight for my truth and my place. A barrage of gasps filled the room, and the tension peaked like a storm on the verge of breaking. I turned abruptly, the energy shifting as I pushed open the door to leave. You think you will get through this without any repercussions? My father's voice rang behind me, deep and resonant. I paused, half turned toward them, my back to the chaos I was leaving behind. When you come to realize your mistake, when the truth settles in your heart, do not be surprised when I am gone, I said, feeling a cold resolve settle in my chest. You will feel the weight of what you made me. I stepped out into the silence of the hallway, the uncertainty ahead bright as a distant flame, but the uncertainty was the scariest yet liberating thought of all. I couldn't go back. But I couldn't ignore the still shadows lurking in the corners of our family's darkness, waiting for the final reveal on that long-awaited day when the read of the will would demand even more. I took a deep breath, the scent of the freshly polished wood and floral arrangements lingering behind me, and I marched forward into the night, heart racing, ready to unearth the truth. The door slammed shut behind me, and I could almost hear the shock buzzing in my family's shared disbelief as my mind lingered on one overwhelming emotion: vengeance.